What would you do if the very people you called What would you do if the very people you called family, the ones you sacrificed for, showed you exactly how little you meant the moment? What if you had already won more money than you could ever spend, but instead of handing it out, you decided to test them? That's what I did, and the revenge that followed didn't just change my life, it ended theirs and mine. If you've ever been betrayed or made to feel like you weren't worth even the smallest effort, this story is for you. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more stories of justice served, and tell me in the comments what you would have done if you were in my shoes. I never thought I'd win the lottery. Honestly, who does? Sure, I'd buy a ticket here and there when the jackpot ballooned into some absurd number. It always felt like tossing a penny into a fountain. You don't expect anything back, but the fantasy is nice. That night had been like any other. I was 35 years old, worn down by another 12-hour shift at my insurance office in Denver. My boss had been nitpicking me all week. My coworkers dumped their tasks on me, and my car was making that awful grinding sound again. I stopped at a gas station to have a soda, and on a whim, I added 2 lottery tickets to the purchase. The clerk smiled, bagging my drink. Maybe tonight's your lucky night. I laughed it off, but he was right. The next morning, bleary-eyed, I sat at my tiny kitchen table with lukewarm coffee and my crumpled ticket. I glanced at the numbers in the paper, first match, then a second. My stomach tightened, a third, a fourth. By the 5th, my hand shook so violently I nearly spilled coffee down my front. By the time I realized all 6 numbers matched, I had collapsed back into my chair, the air punched out of my lungs. $78 million. I whispered it out loud, my voice trembling. This can't be real. But it was. The next days were chaos. Lawyers, financial advisors, signing papers in sterile rooms with people in crisp suits who smiled too much. I kept my head down, made no big moves, no flashy cars, no quitting my job in a blaze of glory. I went to work the next Monday as if nothing had changed. But everything had. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't trapped. You'd think my first thought would have been my family, that maybe I'd rush to my mom and dad's house with balloons, or call my sister Jenna to promise her kids college funds, or send my little brother Matt the car he'd always wanted. But that wasn't my first thought. My first thought was, protect yourself. Because if you knew my family, you'd understand. My mom, Patricia, was the kind of woman who measured love in sacrifices, but only the ones she made. She'd remind us constantly how much she'd given up for us, while forgetting every sacrifice we made for her. My dad, Ron, was there physically, but emotionally, checked out decades ago. He was a man who blended into the couch cushions, nodding along, never defending me when Mum snapped. Then there was Jenna, my older sister by 2 years. Perfect Jenna. She had 2 kids, a decent job, and a husband who adored her. But she also had a smug way of reminding me that I was still single, and still renting, and still just average. And Matt, my baby brother, the one I thought I'd always protect. Except Matt had grown into a reckless 20-something who spent every dollar he earned on parties, tattoos, and trips with his girlfriend. When I helped him once with rent, he'd blown his next paycheck in Vegas. I loved them. God help me, I loved them. But I also knew them. I knew how quickly their love dried up when I needed something in return. When I scraped my way through community college, no one offered to help with tuition. When my car broke down, I slept on friends' couches, because we don't have room here, was Mum's excuse. When I begged Jenna to co-sign a lease, she'd laughed. Not my problem, that. So yes, I knew exactly what would happen if I told them I'd won $78 million. They'd swarm, they'd demand, they'd bleed me dry. And for once, I wanted to know the truth. So I didn't tell them. Instead, I decided to test them. 2 weeks later, I made my first move. I called my mom. My voice shaky, rehearsed. Mom, I lost my job. They cut my department. Rent's due, and I'm short. I just need $5,000. Can you help me out? There was silence on the line. Then she sighed, that long, heavy sigh that always made me feel like a burden. Natalie, you know money's tight. Your father and I can't just hand out cash. Maybe if you'd been more careful with your spending. My throat closed. Mum, it's just a loan. I'll pay you back. Her tone hardened. We're not your safety net. You're an adult. Figure it out. I hung up, staring at the phone in my hand. My chest burned, but under the pain was something else. Relief. Because she had proven me right. Next was Jenna. I met her at a cafe, the hum of espresso machines filling a silence between us. Jen, I'm desperate, I said, letting my eyes brim with fake tears. Just $5,000. I'll pay you back with interest. She laughed. Actually laughed. Are you serious? Nat, do you know how many times you've guilt-tripped me for borrowing $20 in high school? Besides, I've got 2 kids. I can't throw money at your problems. These, I whispered. She rolled her eyes. You've always been dramatic. You'll figure it out. Even Matt failed me. Late one night, I called him. Matt, I'm in trouble. Rent's due. I need help. He sighed, annoyed. Wish I could, Nat. But I'm saving for a Cabo trip with Steph. We've been planning it forever. Cabo? I whispered. Yeah. You'll figure it out. You always do. And then he hung up. I sat in the dark, phone pressed to my ear long after the line went dead. My brother, the one I babysat through every flu, every nightmare, every scraped knee, had chosen margaritas on a beach over me. And that was the moment sadness hardened into rage. The rejections piled up. Cousins who once begged me for babysitting cash claimed they were too broke. An uncle who owed me thousands from years ago muttered, "Tough times, kiddo." Each no was another brick in the wall between us. And I documented everything. Texts from Jenna. Sorry, can't help. Maybe get a roommate? Voicemails from Matt. Cabo's expensive. You'll figure it out. Emails from Mum. We love you, but we can't be your safety net. I printed them all, slid them into a binder labeled Truth. Because one day they would see it, and they'd know exactly what they'd thrown away. But while the binder grew heavier, so did my heart. Living this double life, begging by day, sipping wine in my new penthouse by night, was tearing me apart. Some nights I'd sit on the floor, surrounded by unopened shopping bags, sobbing. Not because I didn't have enough, but because I finally understood. Without money, I was worthless to them. The paranoia followed. Every glance felt suspicious. Every casual housework sounded like a test. I barely slept. My body shook. My mind whispered, what if they find out? What if they take it from you? And then came the dinner that changed everything. I sat at my parents' table one Sunday, listening as Mum complained about bills, Jenna bragged about private school tuition, Matt scrolled through his phone. Finally, I said softly, I just wish someone would believe in me. The room went quiet. Then Jenna snorted, believe in you? Matt, you've always been the weak one. Mom nodded. We love you, but you can't keep expecting handouts. Matt didn't even look up. I smiled, slowly, because in that moment, everything became clear. I wasn't powerless. I wasn't weak. I had 78 million reasons to prove them wrong. And I was going to make sure they regretted every word, every sneer, every refusal. This wasn't just going to be revenge. It was going to be justice. Once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. Once you know where you stand in someone's life, every word, every glance, every silence feels like a confirmation. After that Sunday dinner, I carried myself differently. My smile was sharper, my silence heavier, but inside I was cracking. Because even though I had all the power now, the wounds they'd carved into me still bled. I tried to go about my life normally. I went to work, answered emails, bought groceries. I met co-workers for happy hour and pretended I wasn't living a double life. But every quiet moment, the weight returned. The weight of betrayal, of disappointment, of rage. I started to unravel. At night, I lay awake in my new penthouse floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Denver's glowing skyline, and I'd feel utterly alone. The sheets beneath me cool, the silence pressing against my ears. My chest tight, my hands trembling. I'd whisper to myself, "They don't care about you. They never did." And then, in the same breath, "But you'll make them care." Sleep rarely came, and when it did, it was shallow, filled with dreams of my mother's cold eyes, Jenna's mocking laugh, Matt's casual indifference. I'd wake drenched in sweat, heart pounding, as if they'd been in the room with me. I drank more, at first just a glass of wine to take the edge off, then two, then the whole bottle. Some nights I stared at the city lights with blurry vision, muttering promises to ghosts. "I'll make you see me. I'll make you regret this." The money hadn't set me free, it had built me a cage. But I didn't stop testing them. I told my mum I'd racked up medical bills, just 5,000. I begged. It could keep me afloat. She tutted into the phone. "Natalie, you have to stop being so careless. We're not made of money." Careless. That word cut deeper than any knife. With Jenna, I claimed my car had broken down. I even sent her a staged photo of a towed sedan. "Please, Jen, just a short loan. I'll pay you back." She texted back, "Nat, I'm not your bank. Sell some of your junk." Matt was easier. He'd already shown me where I stood. I told him I was behind on utilities, afraid the lights would be cut. He laughed. "Guess you better light some candles, sis." I saved that one too. Printed it, slipped it into the binder labeled truth. Each rejection didn't surprise me anymore, but it still hollowed me out. Because no matter how much evidence I gathered, no matter how many times they proved me right, some small part of me still wanted one of them to come through. To prove me wrong. To say, "Of course I'll help you, Nat. You matter." But they never did. And the double life was killing me. At work, people whispered about my exhaustion. My boss pulled me aside. "Natalie, you need to get it together. You look like you haven't slept in weeks." I forced a smile. "Just stress." He nodded, unimpressed. They had no idea I could buy the entire company outright if I wanted. The paranoia got worse. One afternoon, Jenna called casually, asking how work was going. My stomach flipped. Did she know? Had someone seen me downtown near the penthouse? Another time, Mom mentioned she'd heard rumors I was acting strange. My skin went cold. Was she onto me? Every word, every interaction felt loaded. I stopped answering half their calls. When I did, I kept my voice small, weak, just like they expected. And then I'd hang up and scream into pillows until my throat went raw. It was Lena who noticed first, my best friend, my anchor. We met for brunch, and she studied me across the table, eyes narrowed. "You're unraveling," she said. I forced a laugh. "Just tired." "No," she said firmly. "It's more than that. What's going on?" For a moment I wanted to tell her everything. The lottery, the lies, the binder full of evidence. But I held back. I wasn't ready yet. So I just shook my head. "I'll be okay." She didn't look convinced. But the truth? I wasn't okay. I was spiraling. One night, after too much wine, I pulled out the binder. I sat cross-legged on the floor, flipping through the pages, texts, emails, voicemails, each one a rejection, a betrayal. I whispered to myself, "This is who they are. This is who they've always been." And then, in a surge of clarity, another thought. This is my weapon. The binder wasn't just a collection of evidence. It was a mirror, one I would hold up to them, forcing them to confront the ugliness they'd hidden behind excuses and denial. The idea of revenge began to crystallize. Not just private revenge, not just cutting them off quietly. No, I wanted spectacle. I wanted them to see their words reflected back at them, in front of each other, to squirm, to stammer, to break under the weight of their own cruelty. I wanted justice. The weeks that followed were torture and exhilaration in equal measure. Torture because I had to keep playing the role of the weak one, smiling through Jenna's digs, nodding at Non's lectures, pretending not to notice Matt ignoring me. Exhilaration because I had a secret they couldn't imagine. Because every cruel word they threw only fueled the fire inside me. I was no longer just collecting, I was preparing. The paranoia still lingered, but it no longer paralyzed me. Instead, it sharpened me. Every sleepless night became another draft of the speech I'd deliver. Every panic attack reminded me of why I was doing this. Every glass of wine became a toast to revenge I was building. And in the quiet moments, when doubt crept in, I whispered the same mantra. They don't get to win. The plan wasn't complete yet, but it was forming. And when it was ready, it would shatter them. Because I wasn't just going to walk away, I was going to make them regret underestimating me. Forever. There's a point when pain stops being heavy and starts being sharp. When the sadness drains out and all that's left is clarity, cold and cutting. For me, that moment came one Sunday evening at my parents' table. I'd been sitting there quietly while Mum complained about utility bills, Jenna bragged about her husband's promotion, and Matt tapped away on his phone, chuckling at memes. Finally, I let out a breath and whispered, I just wish someone would believe in me. The silence that followed was thick, but it didn't last long. Jenna snorted, Believe in you, Nat. You've always been the weak one. Mum nodded, lips pursed. We love you, but you can't keep expecting handouts. And Matt didn't even look up. I smiled then. Not because I was happy, but because I finally understood. They weren't just indifferent, they truly believed I was beneath them. A burden, a disappointment. And that was when my role changed. I wasn't their victim anymore. I was their executioner. That night, when I got home, I didn't cry, I didn't drink, I didn't spiral. I pulled out the binder of truth, spread the pages across my dining table, and began to plan. This wasn't just going to be about cutting them off. That would be too quiet, too merciful. No, I wanted them to choke on their own words. The first step was securing everything. I met with my financial advisor, Miss Collins. She was in her late 40s, sharp as a blade, with eyes that didn't miss a thing. I want every cent untouchable, I told her. No loopholes, no way for anyone to sue, contest, or manipulate me into handing it over. She arched a brow. Family trouble? I smirked. Something like that. We spent hours drafting airtight protections, trusts, shell companies, investments with layers upon layers of locks. It would take an army of lawyers decades to unravel, and even then, they'd find nothing to claim. When we finished, Miss Collins leaned back in her chair, studying me. You know, most lottery winners rush to share the news. You're different. I met her gaze. Different is what's going to save me. With the money secured, I turned to the theatre of it all, because if I'd learned anything from my family, it was that appearances mattered. They loved gossip, loved image, loved being the center of attention, so I would give them an audience. I decided on a family dinner. Not in anyone's home, too easy for them to retreat. No, I'd rent a banquet room at a downtown restaurant, neutral ground, public enough to keep them from exploding too soon, private enough to contain the spectacle. The cover story? A celebration. I told them I'd landed a new job, a big promotion after all my so-called struggles. They bought it instantly, because in their eyes, I was still the desperate, pitiful sister, daughter, sibling. They probably thought I was finally crawling my way out of the mud. In the weeks leading up to it, I played my part flawlessly. I called Mum with a shaky voice, thanking her for her advice even though it had gutted me. I visited Jenna, bringing cheap wine as if I couldn't afford better, listening as she gloated about her children's private school. I texted Matt memes, pretending I cared about his Cabo trip, sprinkling in just enough neediness to keep the illusion alive. And every time I smiled or nodded, I whispered inside, soon. Lena was the only one who saw through me. We met for coffee one morning, and she studied me with narrowed eyes. You're different. I sipped my latte, playing coy. Different how? Not broken anymore, she said. Almost dangerous. I laughed softly. Dangerous? Me? But she didn't laugh. She leaned forward. What are you planning? For a moment I hesitated. Then I decided she deserved the truth. So I told her everything. The lottery, the tests, the binder. Her jaw dropped. You've been sitting on millions while they let you think you were worthless? Not worthless, I corrected. Expendable. Her eyes flashed. They don't deserve a dime. I know. I whispered. That's why they're not getting one. For the first time in months, I laughed. Really laughed. The sound startled me. Sharing the secret with Lena made it real, made it lighter. She raised her coffee cup like a toast. So what's the plan? A dinner, I said. A dinner they'll never forget. Her grin turned wicked. Make sure I get front row tickets. The weeks leading up to the dinner were some of the strangest of my life. By day, I kept up the facade, showing up to work, dressing in my modest clothes, complaining about bills. By night, I paced my penthouse, rehearsing lines in the mirror, binder spread open on the marble counter like a weapon waiting to be unsheathed. I practiced everything, how I'd drop the bomb, how I'd hold their gaze, how I'd savor the silence after my words landed. Some nights, I whispered speeches into the dark, my voice trembling with adrenaline. You called me weak. You said I wasn't worth helping. But I was never weak. I was never broke. I was testing you, and you failed. I imagined Jenna's face paling, Mum's jaw dropping, Matt stammering excuses. I fed on the images until they burned into my brain. Because this wasn't just revenge anymore. It was liberation. The night finally came. I booked a private room at a restaurant downtown. Clean white linens, polished silverware, candles flickering. Just enough elegance to make it feel special, not enough to raise suspicion. I arrived early, binder tucked under my arm, my heart hammered, but my hands were steady. One by one they arrived. Mom in her favorite pals, Dad trailing behind her, quiet as ever. Jenna, dressed sharply, her husband in tow. Matt, late as usual, with his girlfriend Stephanie glued to his side. They settled in, chatter filling the room. Complaints about traffic, gossip about neighbors, laughter about nonsense. I sat at the head of the table, smiling politely, waiting. Because tonight, the performance was mine. When the waiter poured wine, I raised my glass. I just want to thank you all for being here. It means a lot. They murmured half-hearted agreement, sipping without much thought. I continued, voice calm but edged. I know the past few months have been difficult. I asked for help, and you all made your feelings clear. Jenna rolled her eyes. Nat, are we really doing this? I ignored her. But tonight, I want to share something with you. Something I've kept hidden until now. I lifted the binder and dropped it onto the table. The thud echoed. Pages fanned out. Texts, emails, voicemails. Their own words staring back at them. What the hell is this? Matt muttered, flipping a page. It's the truth, I said evenly. Every refusal, every excuse, every time you turned your back on me. Mom's cheeks flushed. Natalie, this is manipulative. No. I said, my voice sharp. This is proof. Their unease filled the room. I let it stretch, savoring it, before delivering the dagger. And here's what you don't know. While you were all telling me I wasn't worth $5,000, I didn't need your money. Because 2 months ago, I won the lottery. $78 million. The silence was electric. Jenna's fork clattered. Dad blinked slowly. Matt's jaw dropped. You're lying, Mum whispered. I smiled. And I... The air shifted. Their eyes darted, their faces contorted. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid. I was in control. The plan was set. The stage was mine, and the execution was about to begin. The silence after my confession stretched so long I could hear the faint hum of the restaurant's air conditioning. My family stared at me as if I'd just sprouted wings or horns. Finally, Jenna broke it. She shoved her chair back with a screech. You're insane. You lied to us. You manipulated us. For what? To make us look like villains? I tilted my head, keeping my tone calm. You don't need my help looking like villains, Jenna. You managed that all on your own. Her face reddened, and she jabbed a finger at me. You can't seriously think this is fair. You baited us. You tricked us. Fair, I echoed, my voice icy. You want to talk about fair? Was it fair when I begged you for help and you laughed in my face? Was it fair when you told me I was pushing 40 with nothing to show for it? Was it fair when you dismissed me like I was nothing? Jenna's mouth opened, then closed. For once, she had no quick retort. My mom slammed her napkin on the table, pearls trembling at her neck. Natalie, this is childish. Families go through ups and downs. We can't always drop everything for you. I leaned forward, eyes locking with hers. I didn't ask you to drop everything. I asked for compassion, a loan I didn't even need, and you couldn't give me that. Do you know how pathetic it felt to sit in my car, begging my own mother for help, and hearing nothing but excuses? Her lips pressed into a thin line, but she didn't deny it. Gad cleared his throat weakly, but his eyes stayed on the table. As always. Matt tried next. Nat, come on, you know I love you. I had other priorities. I let out a bitter laugh. Other priorities, like Cabo. While your sister begged for rent money, you sipped margaritas on a beach. That's love? His face drained of color. Stephanie shifted uncomfortably beside him, eyes wide. The weight of their silence was intoxicating. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one shrinking. I wasn't the one swallowing my words. I was the one holding the mirror. I took a sip of water, savoring the moment before I spoke again. This wasn't about money. I had more than I'll ever need. This was about loyalty, about love, about seeing if the people I've supported my whole life would show up for me when I needed them. I spread my hands, palms open. And you failed, every single one of you. Jenna leaned forward, voice venomous. So what now? You're cutting us off? Going to let strangers enjoy your millions while your family suffers? I met her glare without blinking. Yes. The word hung between us like a blade. Mung gasped. You can't mean that. I do, I said evenly. Every dime you thought you'd inherit, every penny you assumed I'd share, it's gone. You don't get a cent. Gad finally looked up, eyes glassy. Natalie, don't be rash. We're your parents. I laughed sharply. Parents? Parents protect their children. Parents show up when their kids cry for help. You didn't protect me. You didn't show up. You let me believe I was worthless. And now you want to play parents. He dropped his gaze again. Jenna stood so abruptly her chair tipped back. You're vindictive, bitter. No wonder nobody wanted to help you. I rose too, binder clutched in my hands. My voice was steady, almost serene. You just proved my point, Jenna. Even now, When faced with your own cruelty, you blame me. That's why you'll never see a dime. Not because I'm bitter, but because you've shown me exactly who you are. The restaurant had gone quiet. Diners at nearby tables were openly watching now, forks suspended mid-air. I didn't care. In fact, I wanted them to see. Matt muttered, "This is messed up." I leaned toward him, my voice low, deliberate. What's messed up is a brother who chooses tequila over family. What's messed up is parents who preach responsibility but refuse compassion. What's messed up is a sister who sneers at the one person who always had her back. I straightened, my voice firm. This isn't messed up. This is clarity. I gathered the binder under my arm, my hands steady. Enjoy your dinners. This is the last meal we'll ever share. And with that, I turned and walked out. The night air was sharp against my skin, but I inhaled deeply, filling my lungs. For the first time in years, I felt light. My heels clicked against the sidewalk like punctuation marks to a sentence I'd finally finished. Behind me, voices rose, Jenna shouting, Mum crying, Matt cursing under his breath, but I didn't turn back. Because their chaos wasn't mine to carry anymore. The following weeks were a hurricane. Jenna called non-stop, her voicemails laced with venom. You're a monster, Natalie. You don't turn your back on family. You'll regret this. Mum sent long, guilt-soaked emails. We're your parents. We deserve to be taken care of. Matt's texts were shorter, pathetic. Can we talk? Maybe just alone. I ignored them all. Instead, I turned outward. I funneled money into charities, funded women's shelters, set up scholarships for kids like me who'd been told they'd never be enough. I helped strangers who looked me in the eye with gratitude instead of entitlement. Every donation felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Every act of kindness was a middle finger to the family who'd never shown me any. Of course, the gossip spread fast. Jenna painted me as unstable, paranoid with money. Mum whispered to relatives that I'd abandoned the family. Matt whined to anyone who'd listen about how unfair I was being. But the truth was simple. I hadn't abandoned them. They had abandoned me a long time ago. One sunny afternoon, I sat with Lena at a cafe. She raised her glass of iced tea, like a toast. To freedom. I clinked mine against hers. To freedom. She studied me, her expression softening. Do you feel lighter now? I thought about it, the sleepless nights, the panic attacks, the endless cycle of giving and being discarded. All of it evaporated the night I walked out of that restaurant. Yes, I said quietly. For the first time in my life, I feel free. Because revenge wasn't just about humiliating them, it was about liberation, and I had finally liberated myself. The night I walked out of that restaurant, binder tucked under my arm and my family's stunned silence ringing in my ears, I knew there would be fallout. What I didn't know was just how fast it would come crashing down. It started with the voicemails. Jenna's voice, shrill and furious. You're a manipulative psychopath. You don't test family like that. You don't. Then another, 2 hours later, her tone dripping with sugar. Look, Nat, I was just caught off guard. I didn't mean those things. We can work this out. Let's meet, okay? We're sisters. She left 11 messages in 2 days. By the 12th, her mask slipped completely. Fine, keep your money. You'll end up alone, and I won't feel sorry for you when you do. Mum preferred email. Long paragraphs alternating between guilt trips and self-pity. We raised you, Natalie. We gave you everything we could. Don't we deserve something back now? Isn't that what children do for their parents? I read them once, then archived them. The irony wasn't lost on me. For years, she'd insisted she wasn't my safety net, and now she wanted me to be hers. Matt stuck to texts. Short, desperate. Come on, sis. I was just stressed. I didn't mean it. I really need some help. Just alone. Steph's car broke down. Please, just this once. Every ping made my phone feel heavier, but I never replied. At first, I thought their anger would fizzle out, that after a few weeks they'd move on, paint me as the villain, and settle back into their lives. But instead, the cracks deepened. Jenna's husband called me one afternoon, voice low. I don't know what happened between you two, but she's unraveling, screaming at the kids, drinking more than usual. She won't stop talking about the money. I almost felt bad. Almost. But then I remembered the cafe, her laugh in my face when I begged for help, and the pity evaporated. Mum tried to rally relatives to her side. I started hearing through the grapevine that she was telling anyone who'd listen that I'd lost my mind, that I was hoarding money out of spite. But not everyone bought it. A few cousins reached out privately, messages filled with shock. Is it true? Did you really win? I ignored them too. Because I'd made a decision, the circle was closed. Meanwhile, I poured my energy into building something new. I set up a scholarship fund for first-generation college students in Denver. I funded shelters for women escaping abusive homes. I quietly paid off medical bills for strangers whose stories I stumbled across online. For the first time, I was giving without expectation, without manipulation, without the sickening knowledge that the receiver would turn around and sneer at me the next day. Every thank you letter, every tearful hug from a stranger, every scholarship acceptance filled a void my family never could. And it made me realize I didn't lose a family. I gained a purpose. Of course, the gossip didn't stop. One evening, Lena called me, practically choking on laughter. Guess what I heard at the salon? Your mum's telling people you've joined a cult. I laughed so hard I cried. A cult? Really? Apparently, the cult's called having boundaries, Lena teased. For weeks, the rumors spread. Unstable, brainwashed, selfish, cold. I didn't care. Let them spin whatever stories made them sleep at night. Because the truth was simple. I was free. The freedom didn't mean the calls stopped. Months later, Matt showed up at my door. He looked rough, dark circles under his eyes, clothes rumpled. Steph wasn't with him. Nat, he said, voice cracking. Please. I'm drowning. I lost my job. The credit cards are maxed. Just help me this once. For a moment, my chest ached. This was my baby brother, the kid I'd read bedtime stories to, the boy who'd clung to me during thunderstorms. But then I remembered his voice on the phone, mocking me. Guess you better light some candles, sis. I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. Matt, I begged you. I cried to you, and you laughed. He shook his head violently. I didn't mean it. You did. I cut him off. My voice was steady, calm. And now I mean this. No. His eyes filled with tears. For a moment I thought he might argue, but then he just sagged, defeated. I watched him walk away, shoulders slumped. And though it hurt, it also healed. Because for once, I chose myself. The fallout continued to ripple. Jenna stopped speaking to me entirely, except for the occasional bitter social media post about selfish siblings. Her marriage crumbled within a year, cracks widening under the weight of her resentment. Mom and Dad grew colder, their emails fewer but sharper. You'll regret this when we're gone. You'll wish you'd done the right thing. But regret never came, because every day I woke up in my penthouse, brewed my coffee, and looked out at the Denver skyline. I felt lighter. I felt alive. One morning, as the sun spilled across the city, Lena joined me on the balcony. We sat in silence for a while, sipping coffee, watching the world wake up. Finally, she said softly, "Do you ever miss them?" I thought about it, about Mom's lectures, Jenna's sneers, Matt's betrayals, about years of giving and never once being held when I broke. No, I said. Then after a pause, I miss the idea of them, the fantasy of what family is supposed to be, but not them. Not anymore. She nodded, slipping her hand over mine. Good, because you deserve better than scraps. Her words stayed with me. I realized then that revenge wasn't about destroying them. It wasn't even about exposing them. It was about proving to myself that I deserved more, that I wasn't weak, that I wasn't worthless. And every voicemail, every angry email, every bitter text was proof that my silence, my boundaries, my no, those hurt them more than any check I could have written ever would. In the end, my revenge wasn't just the dinner, the reveal, the humiliation. It was the aftermath, the way they spiraled without me, the way they proved again and again that they'd never been worthy of me in the first place. It was watching them crumble while I finally stood tall. Because sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't screaming or fighting or even exposing. Sometimes the sweetest revenge is peace, and peace was exactly what I chose. Looking back now, it almost feels like that night at the restaurant was a lifetime ago. The night I finally stopped begging for scraps and started demanding respect. The night I realized family isn't defined by blood, but by actions. For so long I had carried the weight of their expectations, their judgments, their indifference. I convinced myself that if I just gave more time, more money, more energy, eventually they'd see me, love me, value me. But they never did. It wasn't until I tested them, until I stripped away every excuse, that I saw the truth. I wasn't invisible because I was weak. I was invisible because they chose not to see me. Winning the lottery didn't change me. It revealed me. It gave me the freedom to stop performing, to stop chasing validation from people who were never capable of giving it. My family thought I was testing them with money, but really, I was testing love, and they failed. At first, that failure cut deep, but over time, I realized it wasn't mine to carry. Their selfishness, their cruelty, their indifference, that was their burden, and I had finally dropped it. Now, I live my life on my terms. I give freely, not because I'm desperate for love, but because I want to. I've built a new circle, one of friends who feel like sisters, mentors who feel like parents, and strangers who've become chosen family. The irony, I've never felt richer, not because of the money, but because of the peace. And when I think of my so-called family now, Mom with her guilt trips, Jenna with her sneers, Matt with his excuses, I don't feel anger anymore. I feel nothing. Because they can keep their bitterness, they can keep their gossip, their stories, their lies. I'll keep my peace. And that, to me, is the greatest revenge of all. So now I want to ask you, what would you have done in my place? Would you have forgiven them, given them a second chance, or walked away for good like I did? Tell me in the comments, because I know I'm not the only one who's been let down by the people who were supposed to love them most. And if this story hit home for you, if you've ever been underestimated, betrayed, or made to feel like you weren't worth helping, remember this. You don't owe anyone access to your life just because they share your DNA. Sometimes the bravest, most powerful thing you can do is close the door and choose yourself. If you felt this, hit that like button, subscribe for more stories of betrayal and justice, and share this video with someone who needs to hear that revenge doesn't always mean fire and fury. Sometimes revenge looks like peace. And peace is priceless.